So I'll jump right in. If you've ever listened to one of my presentations before, you may well have seen this slide, but it kind of gives a good, rather simplified, but a good overview of kind of what the problem is and what it is we're talking about here. So often when you think about content exclusivity and a risk or a threat to that, you kind of jump to the illegal streaming, and obviously a very real problem in this industry. And that's, you can see here on the slide on the right hand side here, obviously no revenue is filtering back here to the industry and to content owners. But on a side to that, and I think kind of just as important, again, in terms of exclusivity and upholding the value of rights, is this idea that content owners and broadcasters themselves offer content in different markets in different ways or different pricing, etc. And what we'll see in this presentation is that this whole industry has sprung up of VPNs and other IP masking tools that allow consumers in one market, which is often maybe a high value market, to then jump into a lower value market, and kind of obviously that has a kind of harmful impacts to the industry.
And I mean,
I'm
Alistair,
sure Diane, this rings bells for you.
It does. So perhaps it would be useful at this stage to contextualize that in terms of the BBC's issues. For those of you who don't know, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, is a public service broadcaster funded by a sort of taxation, a license fee that is payable by all TV viewing households in the UK. And we have a fantastic OTT service. I think it was probably one of the very earliest sort of TV catch-up type services online called BBC iPlayer. And by necessity, BBC iPlayer is geo-blocked to the UK for the very obvious reason that it's the UK license fee payers who funded that service and funded the content on that service. My company, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of the BBC, is tasked with commercializing that content outside the UK. It's a virtuous circle because the money we make goes straight back to the BBC to create more content, and we invest in a great deal of the BBC's content. So we have licensees throughout the world who pay a lot of money for the exclusivity of that content in their territory. We have this really, I think, quite fabulous OTT service called BBC iPlayer, geo-blocked to the UK, but with VPNs, it has been accessible to people around the world to access if they do use a VPN to try and sort of trick our geo-blocking efforts, which is where Alistair comes in.
Yeah, so as you might be able to tell, I'm originally from the UK, so I might be slightly on the bias side here, but yeah, obviously the BBC creates a lot of really unique and really interesting kind of content. So it's a big draw for anyone around the world to kind of want to tap into that.
And I think, I mean, we did start iPlayer really early on. I think we launched in about 2007, 2008, which is very early. I think what has really driven the use of VPNs for this purpose was iPlayer, actually, along with Netflix. They were in the sort of early days of geo circumvention. The two services that VPNs seemed to be promoting access to were BBC iPlayer and Netflix, which at that time was only available in a few territories. Of course, it's expanded much more globally now, but it had territorial rights-based issues as well. And I mean, Alistair, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I would say that it was those two services that largely sort of drove this in the early days. But now many OTT services, of course, suffer from it.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that kind of actually leads on quite nicely to the next slide, which is a bit about exactly how those VPNs tend to promote. And you often, if you think about VPNs traditionally in kind of a corporate setting, and even actually how some of them position themselves, is they talk about, obviously there to protect your privacy online, but it doesn't take long to actually look at some of these VPNs and realize that they're very large, sophisticated organizations, and that a large part of what they do is really unlocking of content. And here are some examples that we've captured this year. So obviously, you can see a couple cases of the VPNs taking advantage of the kind of environment we're in right now, right? To kind of cue discussions about being from home and perhaps wanting more content than usual. Elsewhere, you've got VPNs quite openly promoting that you can use their service to access illegal streaming via Cody, which is obviously a concern, and others there. And I'm sure, Diane, you can recognize
yes, I can see
some logos
our
there.
trademark there, absolutely. So that's, as you can see at the sort of bottom middle of the screen, that's the BBC iPlayer logo. I mean, I should say that there are many uses of VPNs, and the BBC is certainly not against VPNs per se. They are often a very useful way of maintaining privacy. And there are some jurisdictions where you don't necessarily want your identity known because of the powers that be in that country or whatever. So there's completely legitimate uses of VPNs. But as you're saying, Alistair, you can see from these adverts, the primary purpose of a lot of these VPNs is, in fact, to access or to unlock content from other regions. I mean, it's very explicit. And we see quite a lot, or probably less so now, but we have seen in the past very blatant efforts by VPNs to promote their service by reference to BBC iPlayer. Get BBC iPlayer in your own country.
Yes, and I think having the logos there obviously makes their service look like it's approved and it's above board.
Yeah, that's right, absolutely. We of course would have trademark grounds to get our trademarks off these sites because it's some misuse of our trademarks. But what we've learned over time is that the fact that they will remove our trademarks does not mean that they stop offering the service. They find more subtle ways of promoting the service, and in some respects, because we are now doing work to combat VPNs accessing BBC iPlayer without permission. Sometimes if they're using our trademark, but then a viewer actually isn't able to get our content, that sort of disrupted experience is not a bad sort of way of handling the problem, because it means that people sort of lose faith in VPNs as a means of accessing content out of their region.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's kind of where we're that's the aim of where we're trying to be in at the end of it. And here's just another quick example, and I think this is quite an extreme case. As you say, the VPNs have become more and more creative in how they market, and they're utilizing the same marketing channels that any other sort of business to consumer service might do. And this is YouTuber called or a channel called MKBHD. If you're into the kind of consumer tech world, which I certainly am. This is one of the main channels. He has 13 million subscribers. This video example has been viewed 5 million times, and this is with a senior vice president for and Apple called Craig Federighi, and he's not talking about Apple's streaming services in this video, but of course Apple is in that business. And at the end of this exact video, it's been promoted by ExpressVPN, and actually Mark Ayres goes through step by step, as you can see in the screen grab there, how you configure a VPN to unlock certain content. So that's pretty crazy, I think.
It would be interesting because now that Apple has launched its own OTT service, I wonder if Apple has got any concerns about this sort of thing. I mean, one thing to really sort of drive home is that content is really, really expensive to produce in many respects. Particularly premium drama content is really, really expensive to produce, and broadcasters like us need to be able to license that content outside of our own territory in order to be able to invest that money into future programming, in order to keep making really high quality content. And licensees around the world pay for exclusivity, and so it's immensely frustrating when that exclusivity is watered down as a result of the content being available through VPN use. And we know that in particular jurisdictions. This has been sort of really got onto sort of mainstream radars in sort of Asian territories and the Middle East and so forth. There's a huge use of VPNs to try and access our content.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just going to shoot through this slide quickly. I know we only had 15 minutes. Don't want to hold everyone up, but in kind of how we do it, and on the product solution side, is these checks are done kind of at a few different places, and what VPNs do is that they're very good at looking at what websites their users are on, and then creating logic to route them through hijacked IPs and various other things. So what we're able to do, kind of just like the VPNs, can kind of see that handoff from maybe, obviously an example here, superflix.com to the kind of subdomain of the CDN. They're kind of routing through cheap like VPN centers, such as like DigitalOcean, and by being across the application and the network layer, we're able to flag that. And I guess, Diane, you've probably done a few things on your side to kind of stop VPNs as well, from more of a kind of legal commercial side too, or at least tried to maybe have a discussion with them.
Yeah, we've communicated with some VPNs with differing levels of sort of interest and compliance, and we certainly experienced the sort of frustration that you have in relation to that previous slide. We've had premium content go out on BBC One on a Sunday night, and we've seen tech reviews reviewing that content and then advising where to access it through a VPN, and it's just immensely damaging for our relationships with licensees and relationships with our talent and producers. So yes, we have tried to re-educate the the legal sort of routes are not completely straightforward against VPNs, but it certainly is a breach of our terms and conditions of use of iPlayer, which is it's very clear when you enter iPlayer. It's very clear that it's for license fee payers only. So it is a breach of our terms and conditions to use iPlayer outside of the UK.
Yeah, that makes sense. So okay, I'm conscious of time, so last little bit here, but yeah, obviously, our role in the industry, as Diane has explained, it's important to hold up the ROI, and kind of we're trying to do that in a way that broadcasters can implement these solutions in as simple a way as possible, and that they work very well and they're high quality, and that they can focus on doing what they do best, which is create a great streaming solution, just like the BBC iPlayer and others.
And I suppose I completely endorse that. One of the really important things for us as a public service broadcaster funded by the license fee is that it's very easy for people for viewers in the UK to access iPlayer. We don't want to put a lot of barriers to entry in front of iPlayer in the UK. And yet what we do want to do is try and prevent people accessing the content from outside the UK. So it's an ongoing battle, but we're having some success.